Good evening, everyone. This is the Dick and Mike Show. And again, Dick is on assignment. How he gets all these assignments, I'll never know.
Okay.
Why don't I get some assignments so I can go? But he's on assignment tonight. And Ernest is with us again tonight. And we've got a topic that sort of hits both our hearts. We're both fathers and grandfathers, and my wife's granddaughter, about a month and a half ago, had a new baby. And because of the baby, we took a picture. And the picture is of, and I can hold it up here. I don't know.
Actually, we have a new ceiling camera,
Yeah.
and Bill can actually zoom right down on this.
Well,
He just taught me that the other day.
if we can get a shot of this later on,
Uh-huh.
but it's a picture that you've seen before in the past of a father holding the baby.
Okay.
And it's just to demonstrate, I guess, that the baby is small and the father's big and he can hold it and that kind of stuff. And it's a good photo to keep for keepsakes to have when they grow up and everything else. But I got thinking when I took the photo, the power of the parent.
Okay.
And when the parent's holding that child, it's totally submissive to anything that parent wants to do.
Right.
And I'm not gonna say it's a bit graphic, but if the parent were to try and hurt the child, they could.
Right.
Nothing the child could do about it.
Right.
If the child kicked, which children do, infants do, and he wasn't concentrating and focusing,
Right.
if he lost focus, he could drop the child
Okay.
and maybe disable it or something like that. So the parent has total control, and we talk about this on this show a lot. Parent in the beginning stages, up to at least 6 years old, I say at least, but maybe a little younger, has total control over the well-being, future, education, and ability of that child. They form everything that child's going to become. And you've had some experiences with this in raising your children, and we're both divorced, and we're both have a checkered past and a checkered history. So we've got a lot in common, and I just wanted to get your opinion on the power of parenting and the results that come out of that. And so many parents today look at their children and say, well, I didn't raise them that way.
Right.
Well, yes, you did.
Yes, you did.
You just don't realize it. Now, granted, there are some children, for some reason, that go off the rails. And I know no parent, I don't believe any parent would intentionally raise a child to be bad.
Right.
We all want them to have honesty and integrity, but it starts when before they can even open their eyes, is when it starts.
You know, I'll touch on that. Sorry, I burned up my hand, so I'm picking at it. But I was at the library the other day, because I watch a lot of movies, and I was talking about our flying program. You heard me talk about the Young Eagles.
right.
And so I'm talking to the lady in front of me. This is a security guy that is down at the end, and he's 20-something, 30-something, and he says, I was in that program, and I had never heard a black man over 15 tell me that they had been involved in that program before. And I said, well, what's your name? And he said, my name is whatever Spurlock. Well, we used to do his grandmother's pastoring show on TV, me and Bill. Okay? But what I'm getting at is back to the parenting thing. We got to talking, and we talked about so many things like you and I do. And I said, man, you're so educated. He said, you too. I said, my grandmother was also a school teacher. So they push you to do more things.
Right.
And this is what you're talking about is very important to me because, Bill, can you shoot this from up top since we got that new camera?
Excuse me.
I don't know if you can get it, but if you can, there it is. And, you know, depending on your educational level, my educational level is how we educate our children.
Right.
You know, and, you know, my grandmother was Like, I talk really, really, I have a problem with saying I could say magician and musician. I hate it when people say feats, because it's feet.
Right.
I hate it when people say it hurted, because it hurt.
You're right.
And people, especially black people, used to tell me, well, you think you proper, you think you better than us. No. I knew I had this proper English, and I would always tell them, if you had somebody, if you own the business, and you had somebody working for you, how would you want them to speak? You know, the feet and hurt it? No. But what I found out was from my mother, and I was 29, 30 before I found this out. Apparently, the first 6 years of my life, I stuttered. And my grandmother was a school teacher, so she spent 4 years teaching me how to talk so I didn't stutter.
Wow, it's powerful.
Right, so not knowing this till I was 29, just knowing I had this power with words. And,
Right.
And that's what we're talking about. And that's a prime example of what you're talking about.
But it goes so deep into everything we're talking about with and we talk on this show a lot about the raising of children and the impact parents have. And we'll get into, because I'm writing a new book on this kind of stuff now, and it's even different when you have the mother's view of a boy child and the mother's view of a girl child. The dad's view of a boy child and the dad's view of a girl child, there's 4 different views.
Okay.
And which one works? And if mom and dad, and my whole thing about this whole thing is if mom and dad don't get together before the child is born and come up with a plan to raise the child. Now, there's going to be unexpected things happen, and that's life. But to give a consistent approach to raising the child, and if parents don't contradict each other in front of the child, and this story I'm writing about is actually from a real person.
It's your great-grandbaby, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the grandbaby is our real great-grandchild, grandson. The mother of the child is my wife's granddaughter.
Okay.
And the stuff she's going through is in this book.
Okay.
Now, many years before she got married and had children, she was a wild child.
Okay.
She'll be the first one to tell you. And her and marijuana were good friends.
Okay.
And it was a way for her to relax. And there wasn't any consequences if she didn't get caught.
Right.
Well, a period of time, and I'm not sure when, because of her history, and she has a history with CPS as a young child herself,
Right.
with this kind of stuff in her family, the CPS is aware of her. So at a period of time during her early pregnancy, I guess she dropped dirty.
Okay. I've had that happen with one of my daughters.
And she was trace amounts, but still she had smoked
Right.
while she's pregnant.
Right.
And they weren't really upset about it because they kept dropping her, and she got clean after that.
Right.
But I didn't realize it apparently when you have a child and you drop dirty during the pregnancy, they will test the baby's stool
Exactly.
a month or so, 2 weeks or so after the baby's born.
Correct.
And they did, and the baby's stool was positive,
Okay.
which meant she had used.
Right.
Now, I know her, and she didn't use very much, but she still used somehow. And she was breastfeeding at the time, so that impacts.
And that does impact the child.
And this is where she's now starting to understand that it just isn't her that's impacted anymore. She directly impacted her son, who is helpless,
Right.
totally helpless. The power of parenting. Now, she's learned, I mean, her and I talk quite a bit, and you know how I talk, so her and I talk quite a bit.
Right.
And she's learned a valuable, powerful lesson from this. I'm writing a book about her
Okay.
and her son, but it's going to be a lot more than just her and her son, because it's going to go into all different age groups.
Right.
And her son's not there yet. But for parents to understand the impact they have on their children, she's had to separate herself from some of her friends and some of her relatives
I understand.
in order to protect her child.
Mhm.
Because if she gets caught again, the consequences are huge. She probably will lose her children.
I have two grandchildren that their mother tested positive, one time for cocaine and one time for marijuana. But, you know, before the show, we also talked about the other effects, the other children
Yeah.
that are affected, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. I told you this before the show, and you told me to mention it. I have a grandbaby.
Right.
Sunday past was the 14th, Valentine's Day. 5 years ago on Valentine's Day, I buried my mother. My grandchild was born on the 12th. Premature, we named after my mother. She's a grandpa baby. So laying on my arm is she's in heaven. Nothing can touch her when she's laying on my arm.
Right.
And I have a great grandbaby who's almost 2. So I was trying to get the great grandbaby to give me kisses, and she kind of shied away. Well, my daughter and the grandbaby came back for a couple of weeks and visited. And the grandbaby's always kissing Papa, always jumping in the bed with Papa, always laying on paper. Can I lay on your arm? So now the grandbaby, knowing that the great grandbaby, now knowing that the grandbaby will kiss me, she runs to give me a kiss. She hears my band coming, and she runs to the door. Papa, kiss me, kiss me. So, like you said, everything that we do to those children when they're young, it affects how they react later.
Yeah, and I don't know, I know parents know that.
Mhm.
I mean, parents aren't stupid. They know that they're the guiding light, if you want to call it,
Okay.
of children.
Hmm.
But they forget it, I think.
We do.
They all, and I think I did too when I was younger. I mean, I wasn't, I wish I was this smart when I was young.
Right. I know the feeling.
But I'm,
If I only knew now what I knew then. If I only knew then what I know now.
yeah. And we all say that,
Right.
but how do we get parents to know it then, unless they listen to us, who
Right.
know it now,
Right.
can teach it to them now?
Or the other saying, I guess, is hindsight is always 20/20.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we all got that.
Yeah.
And in hindsight. So,
Pictures up.
okay,
That's the
good.
picture
There's the
we were
picture.
talking
Yeah,
about.
there's the picture we're talking about. This is our great-grandson, and he is the one who brought about this story.
Okay.
He's the one who brought about this show tonight,
Okay.
because we're talking about if the power in his dad, who's sitting there holding him
Mm-hmm.
now, and you look how his dad is concentrating on him.
Right.
If his dad were to concentrate on him that much for the rest of his life, he'd be a great kid.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not saying things don't go wrong sometimes, but in mom, and I'm going to get one with mom holding him as well.
Okay.
The two of them holding him. So with the two of them holding him, the power those two parents have, and I hope they get to watch this when it's over with, the show in the next couple of days or so. But the power of parenting is so underrated, is so underaddressed when parents decide to have a baby, unless it's a real accident. In most cases, once you're in a relationship, it's not a real accident.
Right.
And, women have a big control in that, and so do men today with condoms and everything
Right.
else, and women with birth control apparatuses that they've got. Somebody stops using it.
Right.
The only way they're gonna get pregnant. Somebody stops using condoms, or somebody stops using the birth control, because then they get pregnant. That's a premeditated thought. That's a conscious decision.
To make a child, to make a human being.
But even if the girl says, well, I don't want to lose him, so I'll get pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
without talking to him, it's a conscious choice.
Right.
And it happens.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have this baby that's going to come in 9 months. Do they talk about it?
Most of the times, no.
If they do, it's all, I hope he becomes a lawyer, or I hope she becomes a doctor, or I hope she becomes this, or, I'd like her to be president, or him to be president, or whatever. They talk in generalities.
Right.
But to talk and plan a day by day, week by week, month by month, what do we do with this child when it does something wrong?
Right.
What do we do with this child when he starts pushing boundaries? Because that's their job.
Right.
a child's job is to push
Put your
boundaries.
boundaries, yes.
As hard and as fast and as far as they can.
Yep.
And unless you're prepared for that,
You got issues.
you can have issues.
Yeah.
And you know where the problem usually comes between the issues between mom and dad.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, Mom wants a woman. You know, Bill, first I want to thank you for that new camera, man. That was a fantastic shot.
Yeah.
Was a fantastic shot. But, you know, I remember when I was in my 30s and I was raising children and I was still doing, you know, stuff in the community with the kids. And somebody said, well, why are boys growing up like this and why are girls growing up like this? When you and I grew up, they gave little girls doll houses.
Yeah.
They gave little girls dolls. They gave them little baby beds. They gave them little baby dolls, and they said, become a mother.
Yep.
And we were just talking about the army men.
Yeah.
They gave us army men
Yep.
and guns and said, become a warrior.
Yep.
And then when our men started becoming warriors and fighting against each other, and the women were still just being mothers, nobody understood why. Because those were the things that were taught to us when we were young. So what you're saying is very, very valid.
And I guess, and I believe in equal rights for the sexes, and that's changing. The attitude towards what is a girl going to become.
Right.
It's like today they're talking about women registering for the draft.
Right.
So be it. You know, it's part of the it's part of the
Right.
equality
Being equal,
thing.
right.
But at the same time, we have to remember, women are the only ones who can bear children. We don't. We can't. And that's all there is to it.
And you know, in nature, that's bared out. And a lot of people may not know this, but I want to throw this at you real quick. If you look at nature, female duck is always the dull one. The male duck is the prettier.
Yep.
The peacock, the
Yep.
male is the pretty one. The female is the dull one. And most animals and bird species, that is how it's made so that they don't go after the females for the feathers, for the whatever. They go after the males. And they kill the males so the females can continue the species. And most people don't even know that about ducks. You know, mallard ducks are very pretty and blue and green and all that, but the female is a dull gray, brownish, okay? Peacocks, the female is very dull. The male has all the feathers in that. And especially in birds in like South America and Africa, though that's in a lot of species, people don't know that. Pheasants, prime example, the male is very pretty, the female is very bland. That's so the species continues.
And the only where that changes is with humans,
Right,
because we're not pretty.
right. The females are
The
pretty.
females are the pretty ones.
Yes, they are.
So everything's going after them.
Right,
And that's not going to change.
right.
We can have equality of races and equality of sexes and everything else, but the male-female thing on the large scale does not change.
Doesn't.
But that doesn't mean we have to raise them that way. That's going to come natural.
Mm-hmm.
That's a natural part of life.
I had a female, she had been in the military, and she had got stationed in Okinawa once, and she was in the Philippines. And not being funny, she wouldn't have a problem with this. She had some big breasts. And I remember saying one time, well, you know, did you have a problem when you were overseas, you know, dating with men, because, you know, you're kind of specific with a man you like? She was like, these are universal. I don't care where I take these,
Yeah.
men see them and they're attracted to them. And that's just what we were talking about as a female being attractive. And it doesn't matter what race, species, color, or men, that's a sexual attraction to them.
And how do we prepare our children for that? When they're infants,
Okay?
rather than make it obvious,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, buying dresses and dolls and dollhouses for girls and tanks and guns and
And
stuff for
right.
boys. How do you mix that without confusing the child?
Right.
And I don't think you can confuse the child, to be honest,
No, they know.
because they're girls, physical girls, and these are physical boys.
Mm-hmm.
There's an attitude that we have towards life that's different than the attitude girls have.
Right.
Girls are matriarch. They're like to mother things.
Right.
That's not going to change.
And real quickly with what you just said, matriarchs, because I want you to, if you go back to the elephants, which is a prime example of the elephants, I mean, the animals again, the matriarchs are the female elephants. The males live out alone. The females take a family group and raise them, and when the males get teenagers, elephants, they run them away. Okay? And that's again what you just said. That's chemically or physiologically or whatever, it's inbred in them.
Yeah. And we can take that knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and combine it with the knowledge that we have and through history and raise children to be understood and accepted and communicate equally as they grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And not to be different because they're girls or not to be different because they're boys. But the big thing in the very beginning is where we go for the beginning of the show is the power of the parent.
Right.
We have the ability to make or break whatever direction we want that child to go.
Mm-hmm.
This program could get very, very personal right now, but I think we're going to slide around the different couples that raise children,
Right.
because that's another topic for another show. But with a mom and dad at this stage is what we're talking about,
Right.
raising a child. It's so much different on how a dad views it and a mother views it. And unless they come together with their views, the child is going to learn how to, in very early days, split the parents to start with.
Right. Pick side. I talked about something earlier about my oldest daughter, when she was a teenager, some things that went on with her mother. And her mother never told her some certain things.
Right.
I won't go into it. I went down there. We talked. But later on, when she was about 22, 23, her mother came and apologized to me and her both. She said, I was so angry with your dad, and you reminded me so much of him and looked like him that I didn't want to deal with you because it reminded me of your dad and some of the pain you went through. So what we're talking about is very obvious, and they do learn how to split the parents. Okay, they do at a very young age. Okay, and children do it. I watch my granddaughter do it now.
Yeah.
She'll ask her mama. Her mama say no. She come to grandpa.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm watching the grandbaby. The grandbaby, she's not even 2 years old yet, but she knows distinctly when her mother tells her no. If she go to my daughter, her grandmother's gonna say yeah. And about 7 months ago, after the baby was about a year old, my daughter came to me. She sat in my room. She said, I'm apologizing to you. I said, what are you apologizing for? She said, I'm apologizing for all of them years that I bitched at you when you was treating my kids this way. Now I have a grandbaby, and I understand. Okay.
Yeah.
This is my heart. This is my, this is the seed of my seed. And I can't tell her no. In some cases, I can't tell her no. So she said, Dad, I understand. And that's what she said. She said, I apologize and I understand. And for the next 5 days, about 20 times a day, she would just walk up to me and say, Dad, I understand now. I understand now. I understand now.
Well, one of the things we talk about when we do our parenting classes is in the very early stages of the child's development, both parents need to be on the same page. There's going to be a whole chapter on that in this book, and there's one on the last book I wrote too. But it's to be firm, fair, and consistent.
Okay, firm, fair, and consistent.
Be firm with your decisions, whatever you make. Be firm in your approach. Be firm in the direction you want the child to go. Be firm about it. Don't waver. Don't vary. Don't one day come home from work tired and say, well, you can do it tonight because I'm not bothered to stop you.
Right.
You can't do that.
You need to tag that, FFC.
You need to be firm. And then the next thing you have to be is be fair.
Right.
Be fair about what you're asking them to do. And through all this, you'll be age appropriate. Because what's good for a 9-year-old is not good for a 3-year-old.
Right.
So you'll be age appropriate, but you'll be firm, you'll be fair about your choices, your decision, and how you treat them. And you'll be consistent on your approach all the time.
We talked about this in a different way earlier when I talked about the program that we instituted, me and Angie, with oldest children, middle children, and baby children.
Yeah.
Because they also feel different. And I went in shortly, just briefly, I went into where the older children, when we would do this, would say, oh, they got to drive this Cadillac, and they got the bedroom set, and they had this and that. And I would tell the kids, the older ones, your mother and father were making $5 an hour then, or $7 an hour then.
Right.
And now they're making $40 an hour. They've been at their job for years. They have established credit. They have a house. So you didn't have a bedroom. You shared a bedroom because you lived in an apartment. Okay? Now they have a house. So yeah, the younger one has, and it starts to click in.
Yeah.
And they start to say, you know what? That is true. You know, they didn't. They gave me everything they gave me, and they gave me as much as they gave them because that's much as they had
Right.
at that time.
And that's good to have explained to them, but they have to be old enough to understand what you're saying.
Right.
And until they get to that stage, they have to know that the safety and security in their home is because their parents are firm, they're fair, and they're consistent.
Right.
And just to change on your own emotion for the day. I mean, Dad went to work today and he come home and he had an argument with his boss. And he's in a bad mood, so he enforces all the rules harder than normal.
Right.
You can't do that.
Right.
You can't do that until the kids are old enough to understand.
That you had a bad day, and
That
you're
you
not
had-
just treating them
And
differently.
today you walk softly because I had a bad day.
Right.
That's okay when you get older.
Right.
But in the very beginning, children don't understand you had a bad day.
I know. And a simple example of that is I burnt my hand up about a week ago, 2 months ago actually. And my granddaughter, when I finally took the bandage off, because I had
I can
a
see it.
blister about this big, and
Yeah.
they wrapped it and it looked like a cast. And she kept saying toilet paper, because she thought I wrapped it with toilet paper. Well, after I unwrapped it, she assumed my thumb was all right. So she kept squeezing my thumb, and it hurt.
Yeah.
And she said, fight, fight. She thought I had been in a fight and hurt my thumb. And I kept trying to tell her, burn, burn, and explain to her. I have a little space heater in my room because I'm one of the few rooms in the house. 2 of the rooms in my big house don't have vents in them because it's a 100-year-old house.
Right.
So I have a space heater. And she always gets to the space heater. She says, hot, hot, burn, burn. So now I've been explaining to her today, burn, burn. So you're right. You have to, on whatever level the children are, you have to let them know age appropriate.
You have to, and you got to be able to talk to them on their level. And a lot of times, I'll even talk to parents about if you're going to talk to a child, get down on their level. Sit down on the ground
I read a book on that.
or sit on a chair, but don't stand over them and lower it over them because you're frightening the child more than anything else.
We only got 2 minutes, but I'll throw these things. I read a book about being a good parent. My 40-year-old daughter was 13. One of the things the book said was make contracts for washing dishes, for doing,
Yeah.
other things. It said when you have a confrontation, try and wait at least 12 to 24 hours
Yeah.
before you do that. If they come in drunk, something like that, wait 24 hours, you're angry. But it also said what you just said. Sit in front of the couch on the floor so you're on the same level. Lay on a bed so you're on the same level. So again, you're not towering over them. It's kind of like businessmen use the power of their office.
Right.
If I'm in your office, you got the power.
Yeah.
If you're in my office, because I'm the one sitting behind the desk, or you're the one sitting behind the desk, you're the one moving everything around because it's your office. You know where everything is. I know where nothing is. And that's very powerful what you're saying.
And we have to learn as parents not to bring that power home. They're going to learn the power eventually, firm, fair, and consistent. Firmness may mean a smack on the butt now and then.
Right.
But as long as it's for a reason, it's instantaneous so they can connect the dots.
Right.
I mean, you can't have a child do something wrong and then 2 hours later give them punishment.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Right. They don't understand what they're
It's
doing.
crazy. First of all, they forgot what they did.
Right.
And you have to be able to deal with them at the age they are and protect them. In the early years, children need protection. They're going to put themselves in enough danger on their own. And we're going to talk about this on some more shows. Now, we've
Okay.
got about a minute to go,
Okay.
so we're going to have to wind this up. But this is just the opening gambit of a part of the book that I'm writing now, and we're going to cover more of this in the future.
And I want to throw something out there. He asked me today, can we possibly do a show on parenting, black parents, white parents, male parents, female parents?
Yeah.
So that we can, and thank you for having me on your show, sir,
All right.
again. And I enjoy with you. I'm going to let you finish your show off.
Well, this is turning out better than I thought it was going to turn out.
Turned out
I really enjoy this discussion, and I think we have a lot to cover. And I hope people out there listening will contact the show or contact us, and we're going to put our email address up there next time.